We are back for another edition of pro wrestling content here with ABJ and BP Burke, and we are covering the history of Jerry Jarrett tonight. Unfortunately, Philly Mike and Precious not available to join us tonight, but that's all right. They will be back next week whenever we figure out what our topic is, which we will get towards the end of the show. So as the show goes on, please, if you have any ideas of topics or things you want us to cover, if you want us to cover a an old match, the history of somebody, let us know. So we were doing the history of Jerry Jarrett because he just unfortunately passed away, but also this is BP's wheelhouse. He's a Memphis fan. A lot of stories he tells me in the car, Jerry Jarrett stories. This is just we're winging this one.
Yeah.
BP's coming off the dome tonight.
Well, and Memphis, and it's not something I grew up with. I didn't grow up anywhere near Memphis. I have family that did. I have family that still lives in Memphis to this day. I have family that went to school in Memphis, but it is something I gained an appreciation for later. And it is, if you go back to those old territory wrestling days, a lot of the wrestling back then is very dry. It's very, 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 I don't want to say basic, but it was very much, we're treating this like it's a legitimate sport, and we're not going to go too crazy. And we're gonna have a little bit of a storyline, but we're gonna keep it under wraps. And then Memphis wrestling is like that drunk redneck at the end of the bar shooting off a gun, going yeehaw. So it's but in a very well done way, and we'll get into that because you can't talk about Memphis wrestling at all without talking about. With no offense to Jerry Lawler, with no offense to anybody else, the most important person, I would say, in Memphis wrestling history, the backbone of Memphis wrestling, Jerry Jarrett.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of the Jerry stuff later on, but this guy at one point in time was being primed and ready to possibly be taking over WWE at one point.
Well, not if you ask a certain guy who does a podcast with Conrad Thompson, who denies that for whatever reason, despite everyone else saying that worked there being like, yeah, of course he did. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to bring up a name you don't like. Jim Cornette talked a little bit about Jerry Jarrett and Bruce Pritchard. I
did not get a chance to listen to the episode, but I will go back and do so.
That's fine. But basically, Bruce Pritchard has for years said Jerry Jarrett was not going to run anything if Vince went to jail. Linda was going to run it. And me and Pat were going to be creative. And there was this whole thing of like Jerry Jarrett was just there as a hand. And if you ask pretty much anybody else, they'll say, no, that's not true at all. That Vince McMahon respected Jerry Jarrett enough to have him come up and basically if Vince were to go to jail for that steroid distribution charge, Jerry was going to run the ship. And well, and Jerry is he's a Southern guy. He talks a little slower than somebody from the North might want. He's not the most magnanimous or boisterous guy. He actually did a podcast for a little bit. He did a podcast with a guy I know a little bit, Sean Reedy, and but just a wealth of knowledge. One of the most creative minds ever in professional wrestling. Learn from the best. Learn from the Eddie Grahams of the world, and really, really just a guy who, unfortunately, that Pritchard podcast has kind of diminished in some people's eyes what Jerry Jarrett meant to professional wrestling, and I believe it 100%.
Was Pritchard not a Jerry guy?
Apparently, when Jerry went up there, when Jerry went up to Connecticut to work in the WWF, which would have been around, I think, like 93, 94, when Vince was on trial, he respected Pat Patterson because your main creative guys with Vince were Pat Patterson and Bruce Pritchard. And apparently Jerry didn't really take Bruce seriously, and Bruce kind of stuck in his craw. And then when Bruce got a platform and Bruce had power, Bruce kind of let Jerry Jarrett have it.
Yeah,
is kind of the thing there, but very much because Jerry Jarrett was not only a successful creatively, he was successful for a long time financially. Memphis was the last of the territories for a reason. They lasted long after many territories died. Part of that reason is they did make nice with Vince at the end. But we'll get into it. And Jerry Jarrett was very much, and Jerry Lawler too. you can't discredit Jerry Lawler and the whole thing because
Dude,
he was a
there's some
like
personal
that.
things about Jerry Lawler I'm not a fan of, but I will tell you this right now, when it comes to work rate in the ring, selling a move,
Selling
uh,
a match,
selling
talking.
a match, talking, getting a crowd involved, and probably still to my favorite pro wrestling angle storyline of all time with the Andy Kaufman thing. Jerry Lawler's the GOAT, dude. He was so good at what he did
He's
as
in
a
a
professional.
discussion.
Yeah, he's so good. So good. Maybe a lot of his views and mine don't align when it comes to
And some of those views did bleed through, especially when it was a heel in Memphis.
yeah.
He had some stuff with Bobo Brazil and some people that doesn't really age so well. Rufus R. Jones, a guy we talked about before, Bearcat Wright, was a manager there for a little bit in Memphis, and yeah, Jerry's views on race might not be as acclimated as we would want them to be in this day and age, but
Yeah.
um, but you
Well,
can't
I'll
deny
just
that the
say this,
man's talent.
Vox, when you guys brought Jerry in, is when Jerry was ruined for me. So we were at a show, and me and my buddy, and I wasn't anybody backstage. I wasn't a hand. I was just a fan of the wrestling show, and I stood in line to meet Jerry Lawler, and I walked up to him, and I just like got a couple moments, asked a couple questions, and I just said, "Hey, like, what do you think of commentary today?" And he's like, it's really a shame that they got to put a like. Well, I'm gonna say person of color, but he didn't use a racist slur, but he used a black guy. You got to put a black guy in there because it's PC and everything's politically correct. They don't give it to the person who's good. They got to give it to a person because of their skin color. And he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, and just said that to me just as comfortable as he would say it to anybody else. And I was just like, oh, Jerry sucks. And I was just like, but he got in the ring and he did Jerry Lawler in the ring. And when he was in the ring, goddamn, was he good.
Jerry Lawler is certainly very good at being Jerry Lawler,
Yeah.
and in his time, if you just know Jerry Lawler from the WWF and on, you don't know exactly how great he was in the ring either. It's a shame because a lot, and you can still find it if you nowhere to look on YouTube. A lot of those old Memphis shows were on Amazon Prime for a while, but now they're like paywalled. Apparently, a lot of it is public domain. A lot of the stuff that's out there for Memphis is public domain.
Yeah, I think
If you
it's
can track
on.
it down.
There's some type of weird app on Fire Stick that you can get, and I think you pay like $4 or $5 for it, and
If it's
that's where
public
all.
domain, you can probably find it for free somewhere.
Yeah, and that's where all the Memphis stuff is at. I believe somebody was telling me that because it's not on the network. It's all.
No, it's one of the few tape libraries that Vince does not own.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was looking for it. But let's dive into Jerry, and then let's get into Memphis and maybe some of the stars that people would know who ran there.
It's all intertwined. It's all intertwined. And with Jerry Jarrett, wow, you talk about a life in wrestling, a life in professional wrestling. You're talking about roughly a 50-year career, 55-year career in wrestling, starting when he was a child, literally a child. Starting with his mother, actually. So Jerry Jarrett is from Nashville, Tennessee. He was born in the early 1940s. He was what they call a war baby. His father was a World War II veteran, and his parents did divorce when he was very young. Not long after his dad came back from the war, his parents divorced, and his mom, Christine Jarrett, who is somebody you might hate. She was responsible for breaking in a certain tennis racket carrying manager in the professional wrestling. It's her fault.
I respect Jim for his knowledge and love. Listen, if there's the one thing
And
I
his
will
talent,
never.
that's one of the greatest managers that ever
Yeah,
lived
he's
right there.
so good. He's very, very talented. His genuine love for the industry is there, but I think sometimes his love for the industry, he didn't want the business to change and evolve to what it is
Oh,
today.
let's not split hairs. He's insane.
Yeah, he's
Jim Cornette's
crazy.
goddamn insane.
Yes.
And he's
Like
hilarious.
like for example, he doesn't like Sean because Sean was an asshole, but also Sean wanted to change the way wrestling was done, and he didn't want. He's old school. He wanted to stay the way it was. He wanted to stay kayfabe, and it just wasn't the way it was going to go
Yeah,
anymore. And my biggest gripe is he just like for how much he loves the business and for how hard people are working in this business. A lot of I think really narrow-minded wrestling fans listen to him and love this industry, but do nothing but try to be Cornette and shit on the business. And it's just like, how do you invest so much time and money into an industry, but then spend most of it talking shit on it because you want to be Jim Cornette?
Yeah, his sycophants can be a little much.
Yeah.
A lot of people just like, yeah, he's entertaining, and I agree.
But when
with
it
him
comes
on
to
some
like
stuff.
him as an entertainer, him as a manager, him as his history of the if I want to hear the history of somebody, I listen to Cornette because he was there, and if he wasn't there, he has it memorized. He has it down. Like, and there's things about Cornette, his views on wrestling, I agree with. Unfortunately,
and more every day, right? You're slowly
more and
getting
more
there.
every day. I'm becoming Cornette. It hurts.
And
what do they say in Batman? You either die a hero, you live long enough to become.
That's
Jim
not
Cornette.
for Batman, but okay. He's not the hero we need. He's not the hero we need. Deserve it. He's the hero we need, or so yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah. You either die a hero, you live long enough to become Jim Cornette.
There you go. But we only bring him up because we're talking about Christine Jarrett, Teeny Jarrett, as she was known. And that is Jerry's inroad to wrestling as well, because after her and Jerry's father divorced, Jerry's a small child at that point. She was working at Woolworths 5 and 10. She was trying to support a family. She had kids to support. She was a single mother in a time where there weren't a whole lot of single mothers. And to make some extra money, she started working for the local wrestling promoters that controlled Nashville, who were Nick Goulas. We'll talk about him in a little bit, and his son. And here's a name that maybe a lot of wrestling people won't know, Roy Welch. And that's a family. Someday we have to do a whole breakdown on the Welch family.
We gotta run.
Oh, no, running.
Heidi running. Say hi to everybody, Heidi.
Hi, everybody, Heidi.
Nailed it. I hate you, by the way. Get out of here.
Get out of here.
It's a good thing I had Katie bring us toilet paper.
We ran out of toilet paper.
Oh, no.
Today. And we didn't realize we needed it. It's so off topic, but it was one of those situations where
almost had to buy a new shower curtain, huh?
Yeah, I literally had to go somewhere today, and I was the only one home, and she was at work all day, and I went to use the bathroom, and it was just enough to get the job done. I was like, "Whoo, baby, we lived dangerously on that."
Well, luckily you have 8,000 t-shirts, so if you're really in a pinch, you can spare one of the ones you don't really like that much.
I just talked about that in the past podcast. I was like, I kind of went through everything, and I keep eliminating shirts to try to make room, and I keep eliminating more of like my pop culture and superhero shirts. And then every time they go, 2 more fucking wrestling shirts show up in the crate. Yeah. And it just my shirt collection is probably 800 t-shirts, and half of it is professional wrestling.
By the way,
half of that is indie wrestling. Yeah,
I can only see the top of that shirt, but I love the Outfielders Outsiders t-shirt you're rocking right now. That is great. Oh, perfect. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Speaking of the Outfielders, BP, I don't know if you've seen the announcement, but the entire Camp Leapfrog back library is available for free on YouTube. One of
you can see my awkward first attempts at commentary now on YouTube.
Yeah. And a lot of things that you'll never know who's holding the camera, but we filmed a lot. Like, honestly, there's a picture that's floating around that just got posted of heavyweights where my laptop couldn't reach the camera. So we got cinder blocks and Dungeons and Dragon books.
Oh yeah. That was
to makeshift everything. Like, dude, literally Leapfrog for us, and I if you want to add to it, but I'm speaking for both of us right now. Like, it taught us how to make a wrestling show flow and production and just getting it done, and
how to think on your feet. How to just make it work. Find a way.
Walk into a place and maybe not have a role, but just get out of your comfort zone, step into something that's needed, and get the job done and make it successful.
Yeah, that was my first day in Camp Leapfrog, and all I did was I was heavyweights. I was just at ringside as a fan, like as an extra, and then I rang the bell on a match or two, and then that's literally all I did. And then by the end, on the final show, Creep Frog, I was camera for the main kind of through line segment, and then commentary on 3/4 of the show. So you never know. Yeah,
I
you got to put that work in.
I was just like, Brian, step in, brother. The
So,
one match I did though, I was like, that was probably the match you would have wanted the most. Where I did.
oh yeah,
commentary
with
Ultra
Manus, yeah.
Ultra
Ah,
Manus.
what can you do?
But yeah, the whole library is there on YouTube. And then not only is it all
On YouTube at what? High Tension HTW, correct? Let's get the proper plug out
HCW
there.
Network, High Tension on YouTube. It is linked below for under companies I work for. But here's the cool part, BP, is say if you're like, hey, I don't want to watch a full match, or I'm not sure if I'm into a full match, but I want to check out a certain talent, or people are talking about certain matches. We broke down every match and made it its own upload too. So you click on, say you go to you go to Love Frog, and you click on Love Frog, the full show's there, or you can say, I can go right down to Effie versus Edith and just watch that, or I can skip and go to the blindfold match, and that's for every single card. So it's the main card and then every match separated. And the thing we're working on now is playlist. So if you say, man, I really like the outfielders, you can go to search playlist tab, type the outfielders, and it's not done yet, but it will be. Every single appearance of the outfielders in Camp Leapfrog and High Tension will be broken down to one playlist so you can see everything they've ever done for the company.
Very, very cool, because you can also see kind of the evolution of that team where you start with Boomer Hatfield and Molly McCoy, and then you wind up with an unmasked Weber Hatfield and Shane McCoy. You get to see kind of how they evolved, how they grew over time. And that is really cool.
Yeah, so go check out High Tension Wrestling's YouTube page. A lot of hard work getting put into there. Clips are coming every day, so you can see like little shorts and reels of some great content, and all of Camp Leapfrog available for free.
Totally, so much fun, so much fun. Any first word I think of when I think of Camp Leapfrog? Fun. A lot of fun.
What match stands out to you the most?
Probably Effie and Edith. Love Frog is my favorite Camp Leapfrog show, and probably that match.
That match sticks. Two of my favorite matches are both Edith matches. That one and Masha.
Oh, the Soviet death match, yes.
In Russia, where we flew to Russia to film that, which is 100% shoot. That's not. And it's hard not to say Darius Carter, Mike Makowski, Frog Sport.
Oh yeah, the Frog Sport final. That
ending to that match.
Oh yeah.
And we got the camera angle, man. That was the best camera shot think we've ever gotten in Camp Leapfrog.
Those are three really good ones.
Yeah.
One I always have a personal affinity for is the trail mixer, just because I'm a sucker for Royal Rumbles or timed entry battle royals, whatever you want to call it. Royal Rumble, whatever. They're gonna sue us. And I actually got to kind of coordinate backstage that Royal Rumble, because a lot of the people who were running the show were out there at ringside, and the only people really backstage were the Kilowatt, who was busy like running the production side of things, and me like running around backstage saying, "You're next, you're up," getting people literally in line to come out for that Rumble.
And I did commentary with Blake, who now works for WWE.
Yeah, on NXT Level Up, absolutely.
He is on NXT Level Up, and I could not be more happy for that guy. He is really, really good at commentary, and he was one of the first guys who gave me a vote of confidence of like, man, you've only been doing this for how many shows? And he goes, you have potential, man, and you're way different than everybody else. And I like the fact how different you are. And I was like, and now the dude works for the WWE, and he's killing it on NXT. So congratulations to him. I don't know what his new name is though. I think it's
it's not Blake Christian. I forget what his name is now.
Chadwick or whatever he was going by.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Blake Christian's a wrestler. What am I talking about? Blake Chadwick.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to Jerry Jarrett. Well, back to Teeny Jarrett. That's where we're starting here.
Took a little side quest.
Back to Mrs. Jarrett, Jerry's mother. She was working Woolworths 5 and 10, and wound up working for Nick Goulas and Roy Welch, who ran. It was called NWA Mid America. It was a huge territory. It was Memphis. It was Nashville. It worked down in parts of Alabama. It worked into Kentucky. It was a big, big stretch of land. And Christine Jarrett wound up working as a ticket lady for them. She would sell tickets at their arena in Nashville, the Hippodrome.
Great name.
It is.
It sounds like Super Shredder's vehicle that he's going to come and fight.
You're thinking of the Technodrome.
I know, but it sounds like something like an evil like 90s cartoon character would live in.
Yeah, if they were evil hippos that fought the turtles, they would be in the Hippodrome.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, so she slowly gets more and more responsibility and more duty. She's working in the office, and Jerry is 7 years old, 1949. Jerry Jarrett is selling programs at wrestling shows in 1949. That's how far back he goes. And then his mom is starting to get more responsibility with booking towns and kind of running some things. And even Jerry is selling tickets. He's putting the ring together. By the time he's 14, he's actually involved in the promotion. He's getting the buildings taken care of. He's getting the flyers put out. And he is really, really learning every aspect of the business at a super, super young age. He's 18, have a look behind the curtain that could take maybe 20 years for most people to get at that point, because it was a very closed-in business. But because the people who ran that company, Nicholas and Roy Welch, and Roy Welch, by the way, you know some of his descendants. I don't know if they're like grandkids or grandnephews or something. Bunkhouse Buck in WCW. I know you've been watching some old Nitro. Bunkhouse Buck and Colonel Parker, Robert Fuller. You know him for his physical gifts, yeah. But he's also a manager in WCW. People know him for. He was a wrestler in his time too. His brother Ron was a huge star in the territories too, mainly in Alabama. Well, he was 6'8". I don't know how gifted he was otherwise, but
Colonel Parker could have had a whole nother career. If Colonel Parker was alive today, he'd have an OnlyFans.
He is alive.
If he was,
he's a little older, but
yeah, if he was
older,
if he was spry, he would have his own OnlyFans.
Yeah. But yeah, his real name, he always went by Robert Fuller, and then in WCW, Colonel Robert Parker. His real last name is Robert Welch, and he's part of this Welch family who has been in professional wrestling since the beginning, since the Carnival days. We have Stephen Chambers in the chat dropping the name Mr. Olympia Jerry Stubbs, who was a bigger star in the actual Mid-South, in the Watts territory. But he actually was in Memphis for a little bit. And at one point, he was a fake masked superstar. Like the normal masked superstar was Bill Eadie, who is best known now as Demolition Axe. For a lot of his career, he was a masked superstar. And Jerry Jarrett was a bit of a Jerry. He had a lot of Carney in him. We're gonna be honest. He had a little bit of Carney in him. So does his son.
He's the king.
Yeah, like everybody's like, oh, Jeff Jarrett's the ultimate Carney. Like, no, he's not. Nope. No, he's not. He's the son of the ultimate Carney, though. Jeff Jarrett is Prince Carney. Well, he's the king now because unfortunately,
it's been passed on.
Yeah, it's been passed on. He was like the Prince Charles of Carneys. But yeah, he had a fake mask superstar, and it was Jerry Stubbs.
There's still a market for Colonel Parker jump rope. He can even keep his name.
You can hang his hat on that thing.
Jesus, you can hang 14 hats on that thing.
It's a 10-gallon. So Jerry's learning all these things, and eventually, as a pretty young kid, he starts booking, and he's learning how to promote, and he's learning how to book. And the way Welch and Goulas did it, because people would have gotten a little offended, like, why is this little kid learning how to do all this stuff? Or little kid, he was like in his teens, 20s. And so the way they did it is they let him do it for a while, like hush hush. And after a few months and things were going really well, Roy Welch goes to everybody and says, what would you think about Jerry taking over a few towns? They're like, I don't know about that. He's a little young. I don't know if he can handle it. He's like, he's already been doing it. So he kind of let them know everything was going well, and then he revealed to them that he was actually doing a little bit more behind the scenes. And then Jerry followed a very similar path in the wrestling as Jeff did later, where they both had similar problems, and Jeff found protein supplements and the weight room and things and kind of improved it. But Jerry was a little small for a wrestler. He wasn't very tall. He wasn't very muscular. He was athletic. He was a decent athlete. But he started as a referee, and then he became a wrestler in the 60s, and he was trained by a good friend of his who was a very, very, very big star in Memphis in that territory, Tojo Yamamoto, who unfortunately did pass away in the early 90s. And he told him kind of like the working side and then to take care of himself, because you had to learn how to take care of yourself back then. There was an old wrestler, Sailor Moran, who taught him how to take care of himself in the ring. And if somebody messes with you, this is what you do. And it worked a little bit later. No, you saw that Tales from the Territory. So he took his thumb, but he didn't put it in the ear.
Yeah.
He put it in the eye socket.
Put it right in the eye socket.
Mario
Yeah.
Galento, yeah.
Dude, what a great, honestly, Tales of the Territory. If you
That was a
have
great
not
show, yeah.
watched that, is that done?
I believe that season's done. I don't know if they're doing more.
If they don't keep that, dude, Dark Side of the Ring was so good. And they're like, oh, we're done. And you're like, what? How do you end that?
They're coming back, I think.
It's so good. Like when they were talking about it being done.
I'm pretty sure it's coming back.
Then they did Dark Side of the Terror. They did the Tales of the Territory.
Mhm.
And good God, like if you love this business and you enjoy this business and you don't go back and watch those Tales of the Territories, that's a huge disservice to yourself because those stories they tell on there are so good. So good. Memphis was probably my favorite one out of all of them. AWA was really good too. Great AWA stories. Yeah.
But Memphis there's something just unique and special about Memphis wrestling. And so Jerry as a wrestler, his big thing was a tag team. And Tojo was his partner. And the way they set it up was Jerry, as Vox was saying, Tojo was a huge heel.
And
huge heel.
Incoming.
It's crazy, I guess, but unless Vox is thinking of something different. Jerry was a baby face, and he started out losing a lot, and he would get better, and he was a young baby face. Back then, a lot of the baby faces were getting a little long in the tooth. The mid 60s, this would have been like the heyday of like Sputnik Monroe. The late 60s, even Sputnik Monroe was a big one. Jackie Fargo was a big one. And even he lasted for a while. And Jerry was like the young, fresh, white meat baby face. The girls liked him. In fact, one of the biggest cities where he was a draw was Louisville, and they actually learned a lesson that one time where they said Jerry couldn't make it to a show because his wife was, I don't know if she was like one of the kids was being born or something like that. And people got like female fans got pissed that Jerry Jarrett was married. So after that, they never mentioned that the heartthrob you never heard about Ricky Morton's wife. You didn't hear about Ricky Morton's kid until Ricky Morton's kid started wrestling, and that was for a reason because you wanted people to think they were going to go home with Ricky Morton.
Ricky Morton's kid's good in the ring.
Kerry's good, yeah. Kerry's
I
good.
I watched him wrestle at that last GCW show. He's a good heel too. He's a scumbag.
A heel? Oh wow.
Yeah.
I was gonna say oh wow, Ricky Morton's kid's good. The apple didn't fall too far from the tree there. Yeah, but then again, there's some wrestler kids that aren't that great.
Or when someone's wrestling kid's really good and they say, well, the only reason you got what you got is because your dad's last name. And then you're like, no, they put a lot of work in and they're really talented.
Well, if we want to talk about a kid who wasn't great and only got what he got because of his dad's last name, we're getting to that point in the story because it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. And it's going to be a big deal. So Jerry is getting better, getting some wins. And they're like, Jerry, what happened? It seems like you're really on fire here. And he kept talking about his trainer. Oh, I've been working with my trainer and it's been really, really helping me out. And I've been learning so much and I feel like I'm just starting to get better. And you would just hear him just bring up his trainer very subtly at first and then more and more. And eventually he's getting beaten down by the biggest heels in the territory. And all of a sudden, another one of the big heels of territory, Tojo Yamamoto, runs out and saves Jerry and turns babyface. And that is the start of Jerry's big run. And they were one of the top tag teams in the territories in the early 1970s. It was Jarrett and Yamamoto. And then we had a little bit of an issue where Jerry's getting more and more responsibility as a promoter through the 1970s. And he's basically taking over towns. Like Roy Welch had passed away at that point, so Nick Goulis was the big person in charge of the territories, and it was we kind of mentioned earlier, and it expanded even from there. This territory, NWA, whatever I forget what it's called, NWA Mid Southern, I believe, not Mid South, but Mid Southern. There is a difference. They were huge. They ran, it was like pretty much all of Tennessee, most of Kentucky, Southern Indiana, all the way to like Alabama. It was Arkansas. It was a giant territory. And they kind of split it up because it was too much for one person to run. And like a lot of the part of the West, like Memphis and West Memphis, Arkansas, and places like that, all the way up to like northwestern Tennessee and the Kentucky and places like that. Not St. Louis. St. Louis is where it cut off because that was Sam Mushnick's territory. That was Jerry's side, and then the other side was Nick Gulas, and Nick Gulas had this idea that we need to make a new star of this territory, and Jackie Fargo is getting a little old. We have so many towns. So he was starting to push his son, George, who we were kind of talking about. You're only where you are because of your last name, and you're not that good. If you talk to people who know, and I've never seen the man wrestle, but if you talk to people who know and will say like, oh, David Flair was awful, David Sammartino was awful, they will say by far the worst son of a promoter, son of a wrestler that ever was George Gulas. And the towns where they put him on top were not doing well at all.
If I was a booker and I needed a character, I would take someone who actually can go, so example, like a Tommy Vex. If I can move Tommy Vex somewhere where nobody knew who he was, my whole angle would be he's the promoter's kid, and I'd make him awful. Like, just Tommy, go out there and shit the bed every night. but we're gonna clearly say that your character is you're the promoter's kid, and you don't have to do anything. Like, just don't help with every time there's something happening. Like, you don't help clean, you don't have to do nothing, and that's gonna be the angle. You're gonna be the promoter's kid, and like I would.
Well, here's how you twist it. Here's how you twist it. Here's how you get more life out of it too. You do a whole thing where like somebody comes in like, I have a big secret. That's not the promoter's kid. And they do a DNA test, and the DNA test proves that he's not the promoter's kid. And he leaves and goes away for a few months, and he comes back, and you're like, okay, Tommy, turn it on, be Tommy, and he's good, and he just tears the house down. He's a big baby face because he had to learn. He had to learn to find that self-worth and that self-value, and you turn him in from the biggest heel to the biggest baby face.
Do you do it where it's not the promoter's kid because his wife cheated on him with another wrestler? So he's somebody else's, like,
there you go. Yeah,
he's the work rates kid in the company who cheated on the boss's wife.
Absolutely. That's a personal issue. And there is a very famous sign in Jerry Jarrett's office, personal issues draw money.
Yeah.
And the other thing that draws money are superstars. And it just so happened that Jerry Jarrett kind of discovered this guy. I believe it was Lance Russell that may have discovered the announcer, the TV announcer, who was also a newscaster at the time, and one of the greatest wrestling announcers, maybe the greatest wrestling announcer that ever lived, Lance Russell. He discovered a guy who was a DJ and an artist and a part-time wrestler who was looking for his big break. Jerry Lawler. Let's just say right out of the bat, Jerry Lawler, and they brought him in to do some matches as like an undercard guy, as a enhancement talent. Jerry Jarrett hated the term like jobber or job guy. Even when he would do interviews and podcasts, he'd always call them enhancement talents. A little bit of the time, he wasn't working in wrestling a lot. He worked in for a bicycle manufacturer. And they say, and I don't know if it's true or this is just like wrestling tall tales. They said he like helped invent the banana seat for a bicycle. But one of his philosophies came from being there. He's like, the wheel of a bicycle doesn't work unless every spoke on the bicycle works. If one spoke doesn't work, the wheel doesn't work. So they say Jerry made it a point, because of that philosophy, to be nice to, well, the ticket taker was his mother, so he's going to be nice to his mother. The guy who sells the hot dogs, the guy who collects the ring jackets, the guy who sells the programs. He made it a point.
Treat every person in the company like they're Ric Flair.
And not only because of that, not only because of the bicycle only works if every spoke works, but because Jerry Jarrett literally did every single one of those jobs. So he knew what it was like.
That's why it's like you go to certain promotions, man, it's just like, that's not the case in a lot of places. Like it's there's definitely a hierarchy, and the companies that do treat everyone like that are the ones people stay at.
Mm-hmm. And so Lawler comes in to do some enhancement work, undercard work, and he's a little rough around the edges. Jerry Lawler was never going to be like Vern Gagne or Billy Robinson or one of those guys in the ring. He was a great worker, but he was a great worker in the Jerry Lawler style.
Yep.
Even then he was still learning, but Jerry Jarrett just saw something in him. So he puts him with a manager, Sam Bass. He puts him with an experienced tag team partner, and Sam Bass was supposed to be the mouthpiece, and it didn't last long. It didn't last long because Jerry Lawler could talk from day one, and eventually Sam Best would be like, "That's right, Jerry, that's right." And he was just kind of fading into the background a little bit. And he starts as a heel, and he starts to build up to, they called it the quest for the title, I believe, the chase for the title. And Jerry would just start beating or getting very close to beating these top stars from all over the place because he was building up to a shot against Jack Briscoe, the NWA champion. And they kind of made Jerry Lawler in 2 different nights. The first night they really made Jerry Lawler was when they had a match where he finally got his match against Jack Briscoe, and he wins. He beats Jack Briscoe for the NWA title, but he beats him the way he won most of his matches because he was a heel. He would hit him with a chain. That was Jerry Lawler's go-to cheating tactics, where the pile driver once became illegal, the chain, like wrapping a chain around his hand, and obviously the fireball.
Or just pulling something out of his trunks.
Well, it was, the thing we pulled out of his trunks was a chain.
But I mean, like, even some parts, like, you watch old Jerry stuff, he's pulling out absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
he just has a closed fist, but
he doesn't need it.
But he sells it as something's in his, like, he has something in his hand. It's just
of course he does. He's Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, it's so good.
Well, also one of the best punchers ever in wrestling.
Yeah.
And if he wanted to, he could break your jaw. Just ask Paul Heyman. He literally did. He literally did. So so Jerry wins, and they do the thing where he hits him with a chain, puts a chain under his arm, pins Jack Briscoe, and then I think it might have been Jerry Briscoe, his brother, runs in and like pulls Jerry's arm up, and the chain falls, and they have to reverse the decision, which was a big deal in that time because it was a big deal at that time because you didn't have a visual pin like that on the champion. Because then they had video of your champion getting beat by some guy, or the NWA champion getting beat by some guy. At that point, the NWA champion was supposed to be booked very strong. You could build a guy up for him, but he was going to lose to the champion unless everybody wanted it to happen. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing Jerry Jarrett always wanted, because he knew pretty early on with Lawler, like, this is my guy. This is a guy I'm going to build around. This is going to be my... There was no Hulk Hogan at this point. This is going to be my Lou Thez. This is going to be, for me... because him and Vince McMahon Sr. were very close. Everybody respected Vince Sr. He's going to be, for me, what Bruno Sammartino was for the WWF. And the problem is he doesn't own the territory yet. And so in 1977, and this is where the big wrestling war of this area happens, because the wrestlers aren't even happy, because you have the towns where Nick and George Goulas are doing things. Nick's promoting, George is your headliner. They're not doing so hot. And the towns where Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler are the promoter and the big star are doing great. They're drawing money. The houses are good. Everybody's doing well. So eventually they break off, and there is a bitter promotional war. And long story short, part of the Welch family, Buddy Fuller, joins with Lawler and joins with Jarrett and joins that team. Jarrett is the kind of the head of the whole thing. And some of the territories, I think Eddie Graham, who was one of the most influential people in wrestling, took his side. He was the promoter in Florida. And so many people kind of said, no, we're gonna back Jarrett here. We're gonna back Jerry, because they could see, like, Goulas just doesn't have it anymore. And they went back and forth for a while, and Memphis kind of became the new crown jewel of the territory.
Now, do you think what really helps Jerry here is the fact that he literally did every single job in the business? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you think like he built a good locker room? He understood everyone's value. He understood the value of a storyline. He understood of looking at it from a fan perspective, and not so much like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it just seems like that's the smart way of running a wrestling company.
It is. And he learned it from literally 7 years old is when he started. He learned it. He got a lifelong education in professional wrestling, and he learned business too. Like he's a college graduate and everything. And he wound up making he made his fortune in wrestling, but once that territory dried up, he kept his fortune by owning a very successful construction company. Yeah. So he did diversify and everything like that. So eventually,
or he was a mob front.
I don't know about that.
I'm in construction.
No, I think he's
management.
Jarrett Construction, I think, is a legitimate business. And J.J. Dillon even worked for him for a little bit. J.J. Dillon, between wrestling gigs, would work for Jarrett. And the war lasts a little bit, and then Jerry Jarrett's his creativity, his star power. He's got Lawler. He's got Jackie Fargo, and they just overwhelm. They overwhelm the. I think there was even a big thing. I don't know if it was this or if it was just. I think it was because of this war. Yeah. So wrestling in Memphis had always aired on a certain station. I don't remember the name, the call letters of the station, but they wound up moving. Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler and that crew wound up moving to another station called WMC, which is where the famous Memphis wrestling TV show that most people know was. And not only did they jump over, but Lance Russell, who was their number one announcer, was the newscaster there, and he jumped over to WMC with them. So it actually changed television. It changed television because when the wrestling show jumped, so did Lance Russell, so did Dave Brown, who was the weatherman. And they not only were they the newscaster and the weatherman, they were also the announcers for the local wrestling show. And that was like a big thing because that made WMC the big TV station in Memphis. It didn't only change wrestling in Memphis, it changed TV in Memphis. And there was a point where Memphis wrestling got like, I think like a 60 share or 70 share, where like when it was on Saturday morning, or every 10 TVs that were on, 7 were on Memphis wrestling. It was I believe they said at one point it was the highest rated, third highest rated show on all of TV in Memphis, behind Dynasty and Dallas, which were like the big shows of the day.
Yeah.
It was the biggest
I'm pulling
TV
up
show.
a photo really quick. Is this their world title?
I can't see it.
Hold on, I'm uploading it now. I was just curious, like looking at the. Of course, it didn't save. I was looking at like their title history, like what their titles look like.
Well, they would have had a few different titles,
but this is like their like their main title. If I'm wrong,
that is the Southern Heavyweight title. Yeah, that is. For a while, that was their title. Yeah, Mark James is the king of Kingsport. Mark James knows his stuff. Yeah. No, Bo James is the king of Kingsport. Mark James, he was a photographer down there. He knew his stuff. Yeah, the Southern Heavyweight title, that was always a thing. That was always a thing where Jerry Jarrett had this dream that he wanted to have Jerry Lawler be a world champion. Because they were the sport in Memphis. I mean, Memphis State, I know Memphis State well. I have cousins who played football in Memphis State. There was a great basketball team there too. But back in the day, this is before the Memphis Grizzlies existed. Well before the Memphis Grizzlies existed. They didn't have a pro sports team in Memphis. As a matter of fact, they talked, that Memphis should get a team in the NFL. They're like, the only way you could get a sports team to do well in Memphis is if they had wrestling matches at halftime. That's how pro wrestling was Memphis's sport, and Jerry Lawler was their star. And Jerry Jarrett, his big dream was that he wanted, Lawler to win a world title. And he never had enough clout in the NWA, because at one point it was Eddie Graham had a lot of clout, and that's when Jack Briscoe was a champion, or Sam Mushnick had a lot of clout, or the Bob Geigel, and then Harley Race was your champion for a while. Or Harley Race was just such a great traveling champion that he's going to really be devoted to that. But I think Jerry would have been happy with like Eddie Graham, who had so much sway in the NWA. He got a few small reigns that only lasted a few days for Dusty Rhodes.
Now the NWA title, sorry to cut you off, BP, but that was kind of like one title that traveled amongst the territory. And then there was a committee, and the committee had to all sit together and figure out who that champion was. It was a traveling champion. And when they came, there were rules. Like when the NWA champion came, he got 10% of the house, and you couldn't make him look bad, and they would sell tickets like more expensive. Like that match I was talking earlier in 1974, I believe it was. Maybe it was earlier than that. It was Lawler against Jerry Briscoe, and normally like ringside seats for wrestling were $5. With like championship prices are in effect, so ringside seats are $7 because they had to pay Briscoe. I love that.
And it was literally a traveling champion, to the point where Lou Thez was the kind of original big shot at the NWA champion. He was like the 6-time champion, one of the most famous wrestlers that ever lived. Did promotions
still have their world championship?
Yeah. So no, you couldn't call it a world championship. That, if you notice that title you had up, it was called it was the Southern Heavyweight title. You could not. You would be banned if you called it a world title.
I like that. So it's
You
kind of like
cannot.
in modern time, like PPW has their championship, their heavyweight
Mhm.
championship, and then the IWTV championship walks in, and that's kind of like the newer version of like where
Yeah.
that title travels amongst things, and it's kind of a little more prestigious and recognized, and
Mhm.
and yeah, I dig that. I kind of like that where promotions say like, hey, we're gonna treat this champion as a little more of a value than the other ones, and it's being
And
defended here. Like, I think that's cool.
and it's also the reason why the NWA fractured. The reason why the WWF became its own thing. Vince McMahon Sr. was part of the NWA. He was still respected. He was still part of the NWA even when he didn't recognize their champion. He had his own thing going because he didn't go into their territories. His son did.
Yeah.
But they Lou Thesz was a champion, and Buddy Rogers was just such a huge draw in Buddy Rogers was such a huge draw in the Northeast, in New York, in Philly, in Boston. He was more glitz, he was more showmanship, and that's what those cities really liked. And they split off because the NWA didn't want to make Rogers a long-term champion, and WWF did, and then Rogers couldn't really wrestle anymore. So no sooner did he win the title in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, then he lost it to Bruno, and Bruno became the guy. Yeah, Stephen Chambers in the chat, absolutely. Mid-South Coliseum was the mecca of Memphis wrestling, and yeah, to the very end of the USWA, Mid-South wrestling was. Buddy Rogers also, I believe he was in a cop too in New Jersey, as well as a wrestler.
Matthew remembers everyone's birthdays. You tell him a birthday, he'll memorize. He knows hundreds of thousands of birthdays.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's super retentive with that.
So, and eventually it became clear to Jarrett that like we're never going to get the NWA title, especially like once the mid '80s set in, and like Jim Crockett just had a stranglehold in that thing, and it was going to be Ric Flair, whoever he wanted it to be, or Dusty. So then they started the CWA and said that was a world title, and then they started becoming an AWA affiliate, and eventually Jerry Lawler did win the AWA world title from Curt Hennig in like 1988.
Curt Hennig.
Yeah, because Kurt was leaving. Hennig was the champion. He was leaving to become Mr. Perfect. But the territory thing was starting to wane, and Memphis held strong longer than most. Their territory lasted into the 90s, where most of them died off well before that. And they started to taper off a little bit in the late 80s. WWF was starting to really take hold, and but they were still going. And the Andy Kaufman thing happened in the mid 80s as well. Jimmy Hart was a huge thing. The First Family.
Oh, Jimmy was so. Dude, that's another one I've been going back and watching old stuff of. Jimmy Hart was something else.
And
the only problem
watch his stuff in Memphis. Watch his stuff in Memphis.
The only thing with Jimmy Hart is in the WCW time, he is a little unbearable. He's out there 6 times a show.
Yeah.
And he's on a microphone. And he's like,
Yeah.
it was a lot of Jimmy at one point. I was like, ooh, Jimmy, this is too much.
Jimmy Hart, the nicest man in the world, too.
Oh,
why was he heel so long?
Such a sweetheart. Jimmy Hart's coming. If Jimmy Hart is coming to a wrestling promotion near you, go.
Yeah, Icons. Yeah, he is coming to Icons of Wrestling in March,
and we will be there.
Yeah,
we will be having. It'll be here's our stable. It'll be us two, Philly Mike, and Mike Skyros, all at Icons.
The HTW champion, yes.
Yeah.
And Philly Mike, maybe a future HTW champion.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be there with his leg propped out, selling T-shirts and lighters.
So, eventually, one of the other dominant territories that was really, really hurting by the late '80s is the World Class Wrestling and the AWA and Jerry Jarrett's like he's trying to like kind of take what territories are left and try to circle the wagons a little bit. And he was talking about merging the AWA, but Vern Gagne didn't want to do it. Eventually, though, in 1980 and 1990, we do have the USWA, which was a merger of the CWA in Memphis and World Class in the Dallas area in Texas. And that was just Jerry like, okay, we're gonna run Memphis and we're gonna run Texas. We're gonna have a Memphis crew and a Texas crew. And some of this stuff is actually on Peacock, the Texas side of it, because I think it was technically part of the Fritz library, which they did buy. And so that didn't last very long until like they're like, Texas isn't working, we're just going to stick to Memphis. And then by the mid 90s is when the wheels kind of come off, and finally the last of the territories is really going away. And that's when they strike the deal with Vince. Like, Vince McMahon is a TV character, as a heel. The first time you're going to see it is in Memphis in like 93, 94. He comes down there as a heel, like bringing in people to go against Lawler. And then
I'm just looking up as you're talking where people can find Memphis wrestling. So I'll have that available in a second here once I find it.
And then the USWA does kind of shut down in 1997. Jerry gotten out of it. He was always a smart businessman. In fact, one of the things people will say about Memphis is, unless you're at the top, unless you're like Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, one of those guys, not the best maybe the best territory to learn. It was definitely not the best territory to get paid. It was not a great payoff territory at all. But it was so many people came through there. Almost everybody came through there. After the USWA went away, and I don't think Jarrett had a financial stake in this, but you had I think Power Pro Wrestling was the one that was after that. And that is where Flex Kavana was around 1996, and that was The Rock's first kind of gimmick, and he kind of got his seasoning in Memphis before going on to become The Rock.
Yeah, he talked a lot about that on the Young Rock, where he wrestled Jerry.
And that's where, well, I don't think he wrestled Jerry Jarrett, but
no, Jerry Lawler.
Okay, yeah. If you just Google Memphis Wrestling, you're gonna find on YouTube, you'll just find people who've uploaded Memphis Wrestling.
Yeah,
it's fairly easy to find. I would put in classic Memphis Wrestling because there have been so many attempts to reboot it over the years. The last thing,
Smoky Mountain, that's all on the Peacock.
Yeah, Smoky Mountain. I wish more of it was. Smoky Mountain was running a little more upstate. They were running more like the Knoxville area, even into Kentucky, like more Corny's territory. And even then, when Smoky Mountain kind of dissolved, a lot of those people went to Memphis, and they wound up doing like a Memphis versus Smoky Mountain feud. I don't know if Cornette was heavily involved. I know Road Dogg was, because he was Jesse James Armstrong. That was the first time he used the name Jesse James, because he was always Brian Armstrong. And then he was Jesse James Armstrong in USWA, and then him and Jarrett come up as Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie. But Jerry would also work as a consultant for WCW, tried to buy WCW. This is before they lost TV. He actually had a higher offer than WWF wound up buying it for, but he wasn't really interested after he lost TV. After they lost TV. And then his last kind of effort in wrestling was something that exists to this day. There is something with vestigial origins with Jerry Jarrett that is still around to this day, and that is Impact Wrestling. So the original owners of Impact Wrestling is J Sports and Entertainment, which was a company started by Jeff and Jerry Jarrett. And they owned it in the very beginning. They had financial backing that fell through. There was a company called Health South that gave them a lot of like initial seed money. And then they had their own shady business dealings, and they went belly up. And Jerry was out of power there pretty early on, because they sold to Dixie Carter in only a few months after they were in existence. They sold like the majority share to Panda Energy, which is Dixie Carter's parents' company. But he was very much around, and really didn't get fully out of professional wrestling until 2005. But again, Memphis Wrestling kind of set the table. If you enjoy wrestling now, not so much the super work rate stuff that's big on the indies, but if you enjoy sports entertainment, if you enjoy over-the-top characters, that was always more Jerry Lawler. Memphis would do a thing like toward the end where Jerry Jarrett would book half the year, and that's when things made sense. You had these really pretty well thought angles. And then there would be half the year where you had like Dr. Frank, who was a Frankenstein's monster, and Tagar, the Lord of the Volcano, and things like that. And that's when Jerry Lawler was booking.
Love it.
So it would get very goofy, like, oh, Jerry Lawler's booking now. But
it would be like if we got big.
yeah, and you booked half the year and I booked half the year. It would pretty much be what it would be like. Yeah.
Like Brian is putting on like classic 5-star matches, insane story details, and I'm booking Jerry Springer wrestling.
Yeah, those are personal issues.
Yeah.
And then obviously Jeff is very much carrying on the family name and the family legacy. But if you enjoy like kind of that angle driven, storyline driven wrestling, thank Jerry Jarrett for it. If you're an ECW fan, and most people don't kind of make this connection, ECW was a more adult themed Memphis. ECW and Memphis were so similar. It was Memphis with an East Coast attitude and an R rating or a PG-13 rating instead of a PG rating. Like ECW, well, that's one of the places where Paul Heyman, I mean, he really learned at like being backstage at Madison Square Garden, being a photographer there. But he learned in Memphis. Jim Cornette learned in Memphis. Steve Austin learned in Memphis. The Rock learned in Memphis. The Undertaker learned it. So many of these people learned in Memphis.
Yeah.
And they learned under the hand of Jerry Jarrett.
Jerry did work then for the E or F
for a few years, yeah.
For a few years. We talked about at the beginning how he was kind of primed to take, like, depending on who you ask.
Mm-hmm. If Vince was going to go to jail, he was probably going to steer the ship. I mean, Linda was going to do a lot of the business stuff. Patterson was going to do a lot of creative stuff. Jerry was going to be the bridge.
Yeah. And I'll say this. People right now are, like, pissed that Jeff Jarrett's on TV and, like, doing it. Dude, he can still go. And he's valuable to wrestling. I don't know. I like Jeff Jarrett. I've always been a Jeff Jarrett fan.
Jeff Jarrett is a wrestler's wrestler, and I understand he's an older. They're not going to make him the world champion. They're never going to make him a tag champion. And is he as good of a wrestler as he was when he was like 38 or in his mid 30s? No,
but
he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be. You know why? Because he's teaming with Jay Lethal, who is Jay Lethal is that good.
And they both know how to work a crowd. Jeff Jarrett is so good at being a heel that you hate him on TV and people are mad he's on TV. Like, he's doing his job.
I remember being at a Ring of Honor show in 2006.
Him and Effie stuff was good too.
It was. It definitely was. I remember being at the Ring of Honor show in 2006 in Long Island. And AJ Styles was on that show. Like, Danielson was on the show. Austin Aries, Davey Richards. All the big ROH people. It was just a big ROH show. Nigel McGuinness, and there was a guy in the crowd that just kept yelling "Jeff Jarrett rules," and people were just hating him by the end of it. Because this is at a time where like Jeff Jarrett, they were calling him Triple J at this point because Triple H was never losing and always being the champion, always being the center.
He was doing the same thing in Impact.
Yeah, and he was doing the same thing in Impact until he lost the title to Christian, I believe. But
I hate Jeff so much, but I hug him also every time I see him. I never met him, but he'd be.
I met him one time. I met him at
he's a bucket
Global Force.
I would like to meet Jeff.
I met him and Kevin Nash.
Yeah, Kevin's on my list too.
As a fan.
Yeah, I would. We were supposed to go to the baseball field when him and Scott were going to be there.
I went to a different. I went to there was a Jeff. One of the things Jeff did was Global Force Wrestling, and they did a few ballpark shows, and they did one in Harrisburg. And I went to the show, just a fan. Like, I wasn't. I'd never stepped foot backstage at this point in a wrestling thing. Yeah. But Jeff was involved. Nash was there as like a guest. Jeff was promoting. A lot of people that wound up doing some stuff. Pepper Parks is on that show, who is now the Blade in AEW. He wrestled Pat Buck, who is a agent in AEW, and started Creative Pro with Brian Myers. Great
school.
Yes, great school. VSK came from there. Leo Sparrow, MJF, a lot of great people. I believe Max Caster's from there.
Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, both.
Oh, Bowens was too nice. Yeah. And yeah, so
I just watched Bowens versus Steve Mack Sanctuary the other night.
Oh, really? Awesome. Yeah. Who else was on that show? Cherry Bomb, who is now the Bunny. I Sonata from New Japan was on that show.
Jesus Christ.
In the main event, it was supposed to be Gallows and Anderson against him and somebody, and then Anderson wasn't there for whatever reason, so it was Gallows in a handicap match. Brian Myers himself was there. Chris Masters, but I think it was like Chris Adonis.
That's another guy too that I'm glad we met. We met him like 2 or 3 times, and every time he's great. Gallows is great.
Oh yeah, I thought you met Chris. I've never met Chris Masters.
No, Gallows is
that
so
was
cool.
a fun show. Black G's was on that show. We've worked with Black G's a few times. Sanjay Dutt was on that show.
Wow,
fun time.
That's a loaded. I mean, you want to talk about people on TV now? That's a loaded show. That's a loaded
I'm
show.
missing people too. I'm missing people because I'm forgetting entire matches. But fun time was at the stadium in Harrisburg, where the Senators play.
Wow.
The only thing that sucks about that stadium is like mayflies come in, and it's like a swarm of bugs as soon as it gets dark.
Yeah.
But it was a fun time. At the end, you get your picture in the ring with Jarrett and Nash for $20.
Yeah. Jarrett's on my list. Jarrett. Mick's my number one. I mean, if I ever meet Sean, that'd be cool. But I doubt I'll ever meet Sean, especially now that he's so involved heavily with NXT. Like he did cons for a little bit there, but
unless they do like a fan access thing for WrestleMania next year in Philly, that would be your shot.
Yeah, but it's probably like to meet Sean's gonna be like fucking $800, and I would never spend that.
Yeah, that's a little much.
Honestly, if it wasn't for Every Time I Die, I probably wouldn't care about the.
Did I say the Butcher? Pepper Parks is the Blade, not the Butcher.
Yeah, the Blade. I like Butcher and the Blade as a tag team. I think they're very entertaining. I just don't think they're used enough.
They're not.
Yeah, I think they're good. But yeah, so that's essentially gonna do it for the history of Jerry Jarrett. Great job, Brian. I love literally like what you're experiencing right now on this live stream is literally every time we get in the car, and I feel like Brian's like I just elbow him like, tell me a story. You know what I mean? Like I'll just kind of start a snowball. And
tell me about Bill.
And I just say, tell me about this moment of wrestling. And I push the snowball off. And then it's a 2-hour car ride, and Brian just educates me on all professional wrestling.
It's funny. I just said Bill Watts. Here's one last Jerry Jarrett story. One of the things I did, I didn't write any prep, but I did try to do my homework a little more and listen to some stuff with him. And it's a shame this podcast is no longer around because of what there was a podcast a little bit before that. It was like an article, a column. It might have even been its own website called Kentucky Fried Wrestling. And the guy that did it was Scott Bowden. And unfortunately, he's also passed away in 2020. He was super young too. He was like 48. But he was a huge fan. He was a manager for a little bit in Memphis. And he did this podcast. He did it for Arcadian Vanguard, which is Brian Lask's podcast company. Oh, I could talk about Eddie Gilbert all day.
I think
Eddie Gilbert, I could talk about all day.
Let's put it in the notes.
Another one I don't need a prep sheet for. We'll talk about when Eddie Gilbert just tried to become Jerry Lawler in ECW, and to the point where one of his sycophants was Jerry Lawler's son. I could talk about Eddie Gilbert. Although talk about Global, talk about Missy Hyatt, everything. Eddie Gilbert's a big one. But anyway, this story, the first episode they did of the Kentucky Fried Wrestling podcast was it was Scott Bowden, the host, and Jerry Jarrett. Jerry was a guest, and he was talking about Bill Watts. Bill Watts was the promoter for Mid-South, and there was a point where Bill had a little bit of a talent shortage. He was kind of getting raided, and people were leaving, and so Jerry had an embarrassment of riches. And so Jerry gives Bill Watts the Rock and Roll Express and Jim Cornette. And he's like, and then he came to Memphis with him and tried to take over the territory. But Jerry fought back. They loaded up a card with like Lawler and everything and all that. And I think when Bill Watts tried to run the Mid-South Coliseum, they only drew 800 people in like a 10,000 seat arena because you didn't mess with Jerry Jarrett in Memphis. Not even Vince could beat Jerry Jarrett in Memphis for a long, long time.
Wait, you mean people in the business go to promotions and try to take them over? I've never heard of that ever happening.
Maybe.
That doesn't happen in pro wrestling.
But no, he didn't try to take over the promotion. He tried to take over the territory. Just like he ran Memphis when they were, and it just didn't work so well. Didn't work so well at all.
I'm rewriting our list of stuff that I have down, and I felt like I had a stroke while I was writing it. So we have No Mercy 06 on the list, Memphis wrestling in general, positive wrestling characters, and then Eddie Gilbert all on the
Hot-
list.
Hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert, for sure. The guy who, one of the more famous things I know was on that Tales from the Territories, when Jerry Lawler got hit with a car and people were calling the police when he got hit by a car on Memphis Wrestling.
Yeah.
Who do you think was driving that car?
Gilbert.
Hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert, for sure, yeah.
If anyone else has any suggestions for a topic you want us to cover, or an old match or an old show, let us know. We're down to cover it.
You got the UWF in there. That's Bill Watts. That's the when Mid-South tried to go national. Mid-South wasn't a real national name, so they changed it to UWF.
We actually got retweeted on Twitter for this episode. Let me pull it up real quick to give him a shout out. I think just because I put the history of Jerry Jarrett into the hashtag, they found us.
Oh, cool.
And retweeted that this episode was coming out. I'm not sure if they're watching or if they're gonna watch. If they are, thank you. Let me sorry real quick. I'm doing it we're doing it live. But I was really appreciative of the fact that they retweeted our promo for it. Here it is here. They are the Memphis Monday Project cast.
Oh, very cool.
A home of Monday Night Project and Memphis Continental Wrestling cast, out each Monday and Saturday. Proud member of the Place to Be Wrestling Network. But yeah, they retweeted us. They're on Twitter at Memphis Cast, and they retweeted us doing this thing, and they mostly just cover Memphis wrestling, and they have a podcast. So you can look up the Place to Be Wrestling Network at placetobe.podbean.com and go show them some love and go check out their content. So huge thanks for those guys for retweeting. That was really nice of them. And yeah, it's kind of cool when new people said new people, kind of put you over a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
I'm so excited for No Mercy 2006. I can finally hear someone else's opinion besides my own. That's covered with nostalgia.
When I hear the words nostalgia and 2006 in the same breath, I just feel myself getting older. Your
body just wrinkles up.
Yeah. I get a new ache and pain every time I hear that.
I think No Mercy, and I think the video game. That's every time No Mercy. Yeah.
Maybe the greatest wrestling video game there ever was.
Yeah.
I never got enough money to buy the hoe. I almost did, and I had one of those ones where it would like reset your game on. You had to start from the beginning.
Yeah. Did anyone like SmackDown vs. Raw 2011? I love that game. I go walk around and get lost, and I bought it twice. I don't
really remember anything. See, again, I'm old, so it's the things when you're younger you get really nostalgic for.
Yeah.
Like I get nostalgic for No Mercy. I was like a late teenager, early 20s, and
yeah,
I played so much of that game.
Do you have any topic ideas that you would like to throw out there?
Nothing really on the top of my head. I'm all about this Eddie Gilbert one. Eddie Gilbert is a guy because that's early ECW. That's more Memphis. That's UWF with the Russians and Bill Watts. There's so much you can cover with Eddie Gilbert. Yeah. A guy who really did want to be Jerry Lawler, but also a guy who like did so much in professional wrestling and has a storied career. And he died at like 33, I think, or maybe at 30. I think he was only like 33. And one of those guys where if he would have came along maybe 15, 20 years later, would have had an entirely different career.
Yeah. Very sad losing Jerry. Like I said, guy had a lot of history, a lot of cool things.
Hell of a life too. He was only 80. I mean, 80's not young, but it's not super old either. But hell of a career. Had a great family. Had his kids, had his grandkids, had a successful
How about
business.
Jeff literally showed up for work the same week.
Well, they said I don't want to keep name dropping Cornette, but they said on this podcast like he was kind of not going to go, and his stepmom, Jerry's current wife, was like, "No, you're going. Your father would not want you to miss a booking, because he's that old school. The show must go on. Like no, you're going." Yeah,
it's crazy. I don't know. I don't know if I was that close to somebody and go to a show and be able to work and still do what I do
but that mindset that Jerry has, Jeff understands it. Jeff lived that just as much as he did.
Yeah. So just kind of before we get out of here, we hit the hour 10 mark. Current day wrestling. Where you standing? What's catching your intrigue? We just wrapped up Elimination Chamber.
Fun
Elim-
show. Fun show.
Very good show. Very good show. I thought both chambers were good. I thought
The
the
men's
main
chamber
event,
was a little long. It was
yeah,
a little
the
long.
men's match, it was what it was. It had to do what it had to do. The insane 14 ref bumps and stuff like that, I can get past for the sake of the story that they built up for a year. The only thing I will say that kind of rubbed me the wrong way is Jay was smart enough to realize Roman wasn't good, and he turned his back and walked away at the last pay-per-view to then take the wrestling spot where he takes an accidental spear, and now that's going to be the reason why he hates Sammy. It's going to be a blood feud. Because of the accident.
I hope not.
Yeah, I think that
if I-
trope is getting old. Is done.
If I were booking and the whole Sammy being champion is off the table, which obviously it was, I would have had Jay be the one that screws him, and then that's how you do your blood feud. Like Jay's like, I made my decision. Family is family. Blood is thicker than water. I'm with the bloodline. You're either with us or against us. But it seems like there's more.
Really
it seems like there's more twists and turns because Kevin Owens hasn't immediately forgiven Sami Zayn, which is fine because I was afraid that they were going to just be good friends again.
Yeah.
Where, okay, if you're that good friends again, why didn't you help during the match when you could have actually helped it be a fair fight, which Sammy would have won?
Yeah, they have time before Mania, so they're going to slow build a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to lead to Sammy and Kevin going for the tag team titles at Mania.
And saying that the whole way through.
Yep. That's the angle. Cody, man, Cody goes, all right, I need to get some shine on me. Give me a mic. Let me be Cody. And you know what? Just because I'm Cody and I want a mic and I can do what I do, throw Paul in there with me. And God damn it, did they make magic.
Because people are usually like, oh, Paul Heyman, he's the best talker. Cody's like, yeah, I got it. I can hang with him.
Cody's like, I can hang with Paul.
I can hang with him.
And he did. Man, what a great fucking promo.
Like people were worried that Cody's gonna get booed. They're gonna want Sammy. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
All the fans are gonna riot in Canada if Sammy doesn't win. No, they're not.
Well, no, they're Canadian. Come on, they're Canadian.
Yeah.
Have you ever a Canadian riot?
I like that people were so invested that they truly believe there was an opportunity for Sammy to win. They got us.
Yeah.
So I think where they got us in this thing is
I never really believed Sammy was going to win.
No, not what's. So I think Sammy even more so that I didn't buy into it because they at least got me with Drew at Clash of Castle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that's the title change. They're pushing this hard.
Well, if you understand, from what I understand, at some point it was supposed to be, and then they changed the plan.
Yeah. But I was like, if they did it to Drew and Clash of Castle, Sammy has no shot in Montreal.
Yeah.
No. But they did great. They did really, really well. Storyline has been fun. What else right now in wrestling is going on that you're into?
Let's see here.
Since the last time we record, Mania has. Rumble has happened. Elimination Chamber has happened.
Well, we recorded last week. Rumble was fun. Rumble was pretty fun. I thought the Becky and Seth Joker thing was cute. It ran a little long. The joke went into the ground a little bit, but that was cute.
The man cave. We have a man
What am I invested in? What am I really invested in right now? Miz is always fun. I'm kind of intrigued to see what this whole thing with Maurice is going to be. Asuka, any Asuka's fine with me.
Yeah, the new Asuka look.
I
think Asuka beats her at Mania.
I hope so. It's time. It's time for Bianca to chase a little. I think Bianca's great. I think Bianca is really, really good, but I think she would do well. She's been champion for about a year now straight. A little bit of a chase would be good there. I think that Montez Ford, when they're ready to pull the trigger on that singles babyface run, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be he has a presence. He can do those exciting moves. He is going to be
Gargano and Seth taking that bump off the Huracan on off the top of the chain. Dude, they did stuff in this chamber.
I thought Johnny I thought he whacked his head bad on the chamber itself. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, they did. They pulled out some stops. How about this? Are you guys looking forward to possibly Grayson Waller and NXT wrestling Shawn Michaels? That's what they're teasing.
I don't think that's what they're going to deliver.
I don't think they're going to deliver.
I don't think we ever see Shawn wrestle
Shawn
again.
comes back No offense, I think Grayson Waller is a great talent. I think he has tons and tons of potential. I think he's going to be very good in the business. But if he comes back for fucking Grayson Waller and not AJ Styles or Seth Rollins, I'm gonna
Or
be
Bryan
pissed.
Danielson.
Or Brian, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm gonna be a little upset about it. If we're gonna get Sean back and we get it with Grayson Waller, I'm gonna be a little upset.
Yeah. I don't think Sean has it in his head that he's in any shape to do a singles match now.
If you can bring back second run Sean and put him against anybody on the current day roster, who is it?
WWE roster?
Yeah.
Seth Rollins.
I'm torn between Seth and AJ. That's my two.
Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
But yeah, WrestleMania wise, I'm very excited for both women's title matches. I think Rhea and Charlotte's going to be really good.
Good story. That's a good story. That's right.
Over on AEW, I thought the highlight of Dynamite last night by far was that opener. Yuta and Cassidy tore the house down.
Yep.
That, and I loved the best friends promo when they were doing those promos for the Battle Royal. Like, I forget what exactly they say. Like, we're yelling. Like, I don't even know why we're angry. It was like, so I love Chuck Taylor.
Dude, Chuck Taylor, give Chuck Taylor and Mike 2.0 is getting more camera time now.
Yeah.
Love that. They're getting work because they're super underrated.
They did put a shine on Uno losing in the main event.
The people were pissed about Uno being in that match. It's like, Uno can go.
Yeah.
They just really never gave him an opportunity to go. And everyone hated the match because it was Moxley versus Uno.
A lot of these people have never watched Shikara and it shows.
Yeah.
And it shows.
I didn't hate. Everyone hated AEW last night. And I went back and watched it. I was like, are they hating it because they're not getting the same 4 people shoved down their neck every week?
I thought it was fine. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with AEW.
I didn't hate it as much as everyone said it was like the worst AEW ever.
No, the week before I thought it was really bad.
Yeah, but I was like, I didn't mind Uno in the main event. I thought it was cool for him to get that shine. I didn't mind the Jeff Jarrett thing. I didn't mind. Like, I just, I don't know. Maybe I just have a different thing.
I thought AEW last week was bad. Not this past Wednesday, but the Wednesday before. I thought that show was.
They are on a low right now. They are on a low. And I think a lot of the low is because they put so much stock in the Bucks. They put so much stock in Kenny. They put so much stock in like 4 or 5 guys that when they actually want to start using this younger talent, they didn't get a lot of fans invested in them because they weren't pushing them.
It's funny because WWE has had the problem of too many for a long time. I think AEW would be very well suited to move from 4 pay-per-views a year to 6.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they have enough pay-per-view booking to do 2 months of really good TV, but then they get stuck having to do 3.
Yeah.
Where if you can keep these stories, and I think they would do better with 2-month stories instead of 3-month stories.
When AEW was doing that rotation where it was like Dynamite this week is like show A, and then show B was the next week, and then show C, and then a mix of A and C, like, and they were mixing up the stories every week, so you weren't getting the same 4 people every single week.
Yeah, you have like 80,000 people on your roster, so you can.
Yeah, I was like, man, that was a good rotation. They had good storylines going. They were doing really, really well.
Plus, I miss Miro.
Yeah, I think once those ROH tapings start happening,
they're happening soon. I think they're happening like this weekend or the beginning of next week.
Yeah, I think ROH is going to be the thing to watch. Like, I think that's.
Then I got to buy Honor Club. I'm already spending too much money on streaming services.
If who I think's going to get signed, and he's featured in ROH, get an Honor Club. Guy makes a hell of a beer.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's getting featured a lot. He's getting a lot more.
He's getting wins. Yeah,
and he's getting wins. I think.
Why are you being coy? Tony Deppen. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think Deppen's going to get an opportunity in ROH, and
I believe you. Yeah, I'm sure he is.
Yeah. ROH is going to be a spot for me. I think that's where Willow's going to get a lot of shine. I think that's where Athena's getting shine there. Claudio's getting shine.
They're already teasing Josh Woods and Mark Briscoe, which will be fun.
Yeah.
I just noticed the way this looks. It looks like your head's on Philly Mike's body and mine's on Precious's body, and I love it.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, AEW roster is too large. People injured still have.
It's not too large if you have 2 companies, though. It's not too large if you're running ROH as its own standalone brand, and they could add some people like Deppen, like PCO if they can get them out of Impact, like guys like that were some
they're
people
still sitting on like Garcias and Yutas and like these really young guys that they can rock in ROH and make stars.
And there's something I can enjoy. Stephen Chambers in chat. Impact has been fun. I've actually been watching Impact semi-regularly.
Fun, dude.
I believe in Joe Hendry. Josh Alexander. I don't know if I would make him I don't see him as like a champion that's going to move the needle for you. He's a great hand. He's a guy I would keep in the mix. I don't know who the guy is you can put that title on. That
I'm extremely biased who I'd put the title on, but they're not doing it right away.
Who's that?
Ace Austin, bro. I would make Austin your world champion.
I like Ace Austin.
I think Ace is. I think his destiny is going to be. I think him and Bay are going to win those tag team titles.
Yeah. See, that pay-per-view, that No Surrender pay-per-view. That the match I'm looking forward to on that one is going to be Time Machine, Kushida, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin against the Bullet Club, Austin and Chris Bay and Kenta. Oh boy.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick.
Oh boy.
Masha versus Mickey James.
That's gonna be good.
If Masha walks out,
I don't think Mickey's ready to lose the title yet.
Oh man, I'd be so happy for Masha. We have been pushing that Masha train forever now.
I don't know how long Masha stays there. I think Masha might not be working on Friday nights or Thursday nights or whenever that's on. I think she might be working on Wednesdays soon. If the company that runs Wednesdays is smart, she would be. I'll put it that way.
She'd be great for ROH.
She'd be great for AEW.
Yeah.
Who on the AEW women's roster is better than Masha? Maybe Athena. Maybe Toni Storm.
Yeah, like Willow's up there, but I think they're. Yeah. I think Masha's just so good.
That's a great feud there. Willow and Masha. Those are polar opposites who would have a brawl.
Yo, because you know who I want to see Masha wrestle? I don't know if it's ever happened. Could you imagine Masha versus Erica Lee? They would beat the shit out of each other.
I'm pretty sure it's happened somewhere. In fact, I'm almost positive it has. I think it happened in Massachusetts. Beyond, I think.
I gotta look that up. I gotta see if that happened. Erica
if it did, I think it's on IWTV.
Have on the podcast. I think she'd be a fun conversation. Masha also wrestling Nick Gage for the GCW World Championship.
Yeah, Masha Death Kill.
Jesus Christ. Love that. Elias versus Lenny Kravitz, WrestleMania 39.
I did see that Elias and Ezekiel are both going to be in the new game as separate characters.
I love that. I think we're essentially leading to Elias versus Boogs, and I'm for that.
I love Boogs. I love Boogs.
Great. Aces and Eights. There's another local
that is when Impact lost me for a long time. Is Aces and Eights.
There's 3 local guys who were scheduled to be at a local taping this Saturday, and ROH stole them for taping. Super excited for them, but damn, I was looking forward to their matches. Yeah, that happens, man.
By the way, a local match that is going to be fun at PPW is going to be Facade and Samurai Del Sol, the former Kalisto.
Yeah,
that's going to be something.
Kalisto and they're bringing in
Lindsay
again. So 2 members of Lucha House Party.
Lindsay dropped a bombshell on Twitter today too.
Oh, what did he do?
He said that this is going to be his last year wearing a mask. And he said whether it's going to be I lose it in the ring or I just say F it and take it off, at some point he is going to be sans mask by the end of the year. A lot of those people from that company are making that move.
I'll tell you right now, ladies, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
You're in for a treat, ladies, when he takes that mask off. He's a good-looking guy.
They all are. All the Chikari mask dudes are.
Yeah.
And masked women, too.
Well, ladies are guys. If whatever you're into, when Lindsay takes his mask
masked
off,
individuals from Chikara,
you're gonna be in for a treat.
Yeah.
Jade not even on the card for Revolution. I think right now they're trying to see where Monet stands. I think Monet Jade is going to be the move, and I think they're trying to figure out what to do with it.
Do you think she would want the TNT title with her ego? She would want the top title.
Yeah, that's true. I think she shows up on Dynamite though sooner than later.
It could happen. She is now the IWGP Women's Champion.
I think the IWGP Women's Champion is defended more on AEW programming than it is on Japan.
Very possible. Tony Khan loves his belts.
Yep,
loves his belts.
Did you watch the match?
I did not. No, I did not.
I'm curious to see how it went down.
I have New Japan World, but you had to pay for that show on top of New Japan World. I'm like, no. And then it was also right after Elimination Chamber. Like, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, well, that's gonna wrap it up for us. We will be back next Thursday.
Sure.
There's nothing going on Thursdays. I want to I don't want to jump right into Gilbert because we just did a history of. Do you want to do No Mercy 06? Watch the
Sure.
show. We'll try to mix it up.
I don't think I've ever seen this show, to be honest.
All right.
That was a point where I was working third shift, so Sunday nights when WWE pay-per-views were on, I was working. So I don't think I've ever watched the show. So yeah, let's do it.
That's what we're gonna do. So next week we're gonna review a show as picked by Kai. We're gonna be doing No Mercy 06. That's gonna be our next upcoming show. And then, like I said, if you guys have any ideas, if you're listening to this on the replay, please hit us up. Follow us on all social media, Anthony Blackwell Jr. on all social media, or A Blackwell Jr. You can follow BP Burke under his podcast. I'll let him plug that right now.
Murder My Dude. It's at Podcast My Dude at Facebook, but if you find Murder My Dude, it'll be on there. It's at Murder My Dude on Instagram and Twitter. I think I was told we have a link tree, but I didn't know that. It might be like Project Humanoid or Murder My Dude. I'm not sure.
If you have one, you just send it. So put it in the link.
I have to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
But we do have a new episode coming out in roughly, what time is it now? It is 9:00. In about 3 hours, there's going to be a new Murder My Dude coming out. It is going to be the title is a little misleading. Basket Full of Puppies, My Dude. Which is about the anthrax killings, the anthrax murders of 2001. The joke there is there was a thing, this was like right after 9/11, where people in the media, like people who work for the National Enquirer and NBC News, they were getting letters with like deadly anthrax in it. And the band Anthrax, like Scott Ian from Anthrax, was like, we have to change our name now, don't we? Because this was a time like right after 9/11, like a lot of things that had to do with like buildings or sad stuff, or
even
all
like
Rage Against
shootings were getting bad when the bullet, like if gun had related in sports, like the bullets changed to the Wizards.
Yeah, like they would just pull songs if something really bad happened. So like Anthrax is like, we're gonna lose our radio play. We have to change our name, and then they never did, obviously. But Scotty and from Anthrax made a joke like, yeah, we're gonna change our name to Basket Full of Puppies.
Yeah.
So as a tribute to that, it's called Basket Full of Puppies.
One of our friends is on tour right now with Anthrax.
Oh, nice.
Eddie Collins is on tour right now with Anthrax.
Sweet.
But yeah, so we'll end it there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us again. Next week, Philly Mike and Precious should be back in studio with us hanging out. So that'll be our next topic. And listen, here's what I want you guys to do from now until next time we come live again. Think of some ideas. Find some old stuff. Be like, hey, do the history of this guy. Challenge us. Make BP do research, which I don't think you're going to be able to do. But
I'm going to be doing a show on Spaceman Frank Hickey soon.
Yeah, and if like this is doing pretty well, maybe we can add another recording or taping. You know, maybe I don't know exactly what day. It won't be consistent, but we'll have to add some stuff in. But if there's independent shows you want us to cover, if you're like, hey, I'm from here and this show is on the YouTube, we'll watch it and we'll talk about it and see how we do. Like we'll review independent, we'll review stuff that's on networks. Like let's have some fun here. Like we want fan interaction. Let us know what you guys are into. Also, movie reviews are coming very soon. Billy sent me the pop culture music. It is fucking cool. So I watched. So the first pop culture I think that we're gonna do is I don't know if it's gonna be me, Billy, and Nikolai, or just me and Nikolai. But we're gonna be going to see Ant-Man. So we're gonna film that all in the car. I have one of the 3 GoPros coming. So we're gonna test out in-car filming with the GoPro, and we're gonna go.
Remember to brake at red lights.
Yes, brake at red lights. I definitely will do that.
No, don't brake. Stop at red lights. Don't brake. Stop. I'm not trying to be a backseat driver, but stop at red lights.
Yeah, that happened. We cut that out though. And then horror movie wise, we're waiting for the music, but me and Heidi have already started the prep for 2 different horror movies. We're going to be doing Scream 5, so in prep of Scream 6, and the movie Smile. So they're the 2 first horror movies we're going to be doing.
Right on.
We got some suggestions. Bruno Sammartino.
Definitely don't have to prep for that one.
What's that?
Definitely don't have to prep for that one. And another person where a huge part of their story is their mother. Bruno's mother was a badass.
Really?
Bruno Sammartino's mother was a badass of all badasses.
I got a lot, but I just don't want to be the only one sending things in. Bring it, brother. We like it. And then Stephen Chambers said, despite him being in bad health, superstar Billy Graham would be a good episode.
Now, if you love Dusty promos, listen to some superstar Billy Graham promos because they're right up there too.
Dude, I've been following No Context Ric Flair and No Context Dusty Rhodes on Instagram.
They're great.
So funny. That's what I need to do. I need to. What promotion are they always doing those promos at and working? Like, where? What?
Those promos are mostly, and these are on Peacock. They're the old. I don't think they call it on Peacock, but they're the old. The name of the show was World Championship Wrestling, but it was before, like literally when Turner bought WCW or at Jim Crockett Promotions, he changed the name to WCW because of this show. The
Okay.
name of the show was later on it became WCW Saturday Night, but it was the Saturday Night 605 from like 1985 because I think that's when we could do a whole thing on Black Saturday too, because that time slot belonged to Georgia Championship Wrestling. Vince bought Georgia Championship Wrestling, took over the time slot. People hated it and just protested. Ted Turner, the ratings were so bad, Ted Turner's like, I got to get Vince out of this deal. So the deal gets brokered where Jim Crockett buys a time slot, and now Jim Crockett Promotions is on nationwide cable, Saturday night 605 at TBS. And that's where where Flair's behind the desk and they have the globe behind him. And it's David Crockett and Tony Schiavone with his mustache. That is all. The show is World Championship Wrestling, and it's on.
I've been watching Nitro, so I'm still doing my Nitro watch-alongs. Did not know Savage won the WCW title at one point in time.
What did he? One time, two times, actually 3 times, I think. Yeah, 3
Really?
times. Yeah, Savage was champion a couple times.
I just seen where he won and then immediately lost it. Like
to Flair.
Yes.
He won the World War III and lost it to Starrcade. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he wins it back and then loses it immediately. Yeah. Actually, Savage, I believe, is a 4-time WCW. I'm trying to think. I think he's a 4-time WCW champion.
Yeah. So that's right about where I am right now in my history of WCW around that time.
I think Savage is a 4-time WCW champion. Sorry to interrupt, and I think he had the title for a grand total of like maybe 3 months.
Yeah. And I've been watching Primetime Wrestling, going back and watching that. Match-wise, there's really no stories or anything.
You're watching that for Bobby and Gorilla. Yeah.
Bobby and Gorilla.
The greatest comedy team in the history of wrestling.
Love it. I love it so much. Like I said, I'm really going to tap into that this year with you at Sanctuary. That's what I want to read.
Stop. I'll have you thrown out of there.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait. And then I've been I'm probably gonna add World Championship Wrestling in there because I want to see that older stuff.
Yeah, that's it's studio wrestling. Like a lot of the matches are enhancement matches to make guys look good. There's a lot of the Road Warriors beating the ever loving piss out of people. Yeah. But if you're into that kind of thing, then World Championship Wrestling is for you. And great promos. You have Dusty, you have Flair, you have Magnum TA. You have some great characters on those shows.
But all right, well, that'll do it. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time on this channel. More stuff coming. Make sure you hit that share button. Let people know we exist. And there's one. The history of William Regal.
Well, if you have the Tornado Tag podcast archives, we did that.
Yeah, we did do a William Regal episode already on Tornado Tag, but I'll add it to the list because maybe that's something we can dive back into and rehash or redo. But we did do a William Regal episode on Tornado Tag podcast.
Talked about him wrestling the carnivals, all that stuff. Yeah.
His kid's good, man. I like his kid.
His kid's pretty good.
Pretty good. But yeah, so
and they have him with they have him with a great person right now.
Yeah.
I watched NXT. I watched most of NXT. It hurt watching a lot of NXT. It was painful. But he is definitely a bright spot. And that opener was good too. Trick Williams impressed me a little bit. I know how good. Who did he wrestle? Who did he wrestle? No.
Shit.
Dragonoff's
really good.
Yeah. It was Dragonoff and Trick Williams because they're going to do Dragonoff and Carmelo Hayes, which is going to be awesome. That is worth. I am a critic of the new NXT appointment viewing for Dragonoff and Carmelo Hayes. That's going to be a barn burner.
Is that women's roster win you over at all?
No. That is where there are certain people that win me over, and there's certain people like, oh, this is awful. I'm a big fan of some of them. Roxanne Perez I like a lot. Tiffany Stratton I think has a lot of potential when she gets some seasoning under her. I think she has a good character. She has athleticism. And then there's just a lot of goofy shit. Saul Ruben can do some fun stuff, but some of the stuff is just too goofy.
I like. I'm saying they're goofy, but they do have a lot of in-ring potential.
Mainly the ones I said. When they choose fun, I guess. But who are you liking?
Who's the other? She reminds me of Christina Marie. Very short power lifter, athlete.
Ivy Nile.
No, shit. I had a brain fart now. Shit, I always forget her fucking name.
The girl whose whole gimmick is she's a Twitch streamer is awful.
No, I don't like that. That girl doesn't do it for me.
I don't know.
No,
she might be great in the ring. I don't know. I
She's
just don't like the
like
gimmick.
a badass character. Hold on. I think I told you this reminds me of
You did. Oh,
Christina Marie, and you're like, I don't see it.
Are you talking about Zoe Stark?
Zoe Starks, yes.
Zoe Stark's a great wrestler. She was great. She was great in good NXT.
I like Zoe Starks a lot. Who's the other one I like on that roster? Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now. The champion, the girl who's the champion, she's really good at
Roxanne
NXT.
Perez, yeah, she's
Roxanne
yeah.
Perez. I think Alba Fire's good in the ring. I think her story right now is a little wacky. But
the Papa Shango Isla Dawn thing is not.
Yeah, I like the Creed brothers. I think they're really good.
They're fun. They're fun.
They're a good time. I love the dudes with the crop tops.
Pretty deadly. They're whatever. They're good. Chase you does nothing for me. I know some people like it. It does nothing. It's so dumb.
I think Gigi and what's her name are really entertaining.
Yeah, JC Jane doesn't do a whole lot for me. I get it if you're into it, but
JD McDonough's good.
He has a giant head, and I know I'm one to talk, but he has a giant head.
He does. His head's bigger than his body. Trying to think who else I think is pretty dope. They're trying to push it really hard, but I'm trying that Lyra Valkyria.
Oh yeah.
And
that's kind of the problem for me. It's like NXT UK didn't shut down; it just became NXT. It's kind of how I feel sometimes.
I like that Jinder's there now. Jinder and that little stable they have, I think they look really cool. Like they just like those just big.
The stable of guys who couldn't cut it on the main roster.
Yeah, but I think they're perfect for NXT. I still think that Quinn dude, I want to see him more on TV. I really like him.
Oh, Zion Quinn.
Wes Lee, I really like.
Yeah. I wish they would bring back his buddy who got railroaded.
Well, you see who's kind of campaigning for him?
MJF, yeah, for good reason.
Maybe, dude. Well, we met him at PPW. He was a nice guy.
Say his name, Zachary Wentz.
Zachary Wentz is super nice.
Zachary Wentz.
Maybe if the right people are championing for him. I know they brought him back to the Performance Center to do stuff. He just wasn't put on camera.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a thing. All right, let's get out of here. Here's some music by Billy Trey. We'll see you guys next Thursday. Bye.